To understand how to assign GitHub or GitHub Copilot licenses, it is important to first understand what license types are available to you as a customer. In this quick video, we will go over the different products and licenses that are available within GitHub and their respective prices that are relevant to you. We will go over how to assign these licenses with a quick architectural overview of how a GitHub tenant works. And we will quickly review the key stakeholders for assigning these licenses. Let's get started with an overview of the different licenses available. In this table, we have different licenses with their name, their respective price, and a quick description of what they provide. Let's start with the first row, GitHub Enterprise. As the name suggests, a GitHub Enterprise license is a license for enterprise developers that allow them to have access to a secure, scalable, and fully managed developer platform. Effectively, if I am a developer and I need to access source code on GitHub, I will pay a GitHub Enterprise license and enjoy the security and compliance benefits that comes with it for enterprises. The list prices are listed here, and for GitHub Enterprise, the list price is 21 US dollars per user per month. Another license that has been of a lot of interest lately is a GitHub Copilot license, or GitHub Copilot Business to be exact. GitHub Copilot provides myself as a developer an AI powered coding assistant, which will help me write code faster, but which also gives my admins availability to centralize management and access policy controls. The list price is 19 US dollars for a GitHub Copilot business license, and I have a certain number of requests per month that I can make as a developer to the more premium models. GitHub Copilot Enterprise is an upgrade to Copilot Business and can be assigned to a handful of developers or to all your developers who want to use Copilot. GitHub Copilot Enterprise is effectively the same as Copilot Business. However, it is an enhanced SKU, which gives me access to additional premium models that might not be accessible through Copilot Business, such as Claude Opus, and an increased request quota, which means that I have more powerful models and more requests that I can make to these powerful models with Copilot Enterprise. Great for power users. Finally, GitHub Advanced Security is a SKU that allows myself as an organization and as a developer to be protected from a DevSecOps point of view, a developer security operations perspective, and includes code scanning, secret scanning, and dependency review. The full license for advanced security is $49 per user per month. However, it can be broken down into sub licenses should you need to. So, with these different license types overviews, let's take a look at how we assign these licenses in GitHub. License assignment starts with a GitHub Enterprise tenant that would, as you would suggest, be managed by an administrator who has a control plane through which they can manage billing, what repositories are available, what pipelines are available, etc. Very similar of an overview as Azure DevOps or any other source control tool. Now, for enterprise customers, the recommended path is to leverage a GitHub Enterprise tenant connected with your identity provider to match your overall SSO strategy. And for Microsoft customers, you can leverage Microsoft Entra ID. Now, within a GitHub Enterprise tenant, I, as an admin, have the ability to create different organizations. For example, this first organization could simply be for my agricultural business unit, while the second one could be for a mobile focused business unit, something of that sort. And within an organization, I can have multiple teams. Each team has access to specific repositories, and I can perform role based access control within GitHub using these teams. Now, if I want to assign users to a team and then have them have access to a repo, these users will each consume a GitHub Enterprise license through which they can enjoy, once again, collaboration, enterprise controls, but also deployment and management of their application code, their source code, effectively. If I wanted these developers who are working on GitHub to also have access to GitHub Copilot, I can assign a license through an organization or just to this organization. For example, I can say everyone in my agricultural business unit will have access to GitHub Copilot. This is scenario one, where you leverage both GitHub Enterprise licenses and Copilot. And effectively, this would be useful for an organization or team that wants to use GitHub for their source code. You can take advantage of GitHub Enterprise and AI capabilities with Copilot, such as the coding agent, which is an asynchronous teammate that works in their own pull request and environment, a code review agent, and further context that Copilot has once you host your code in GitHub. The total price, if we consider Copilot Business, is $40 per user per month. And again, this is a list price. Please check with your Microsoft sales team or GitHub sales team for specific details on how your pricing might be lower. Now, a second scenario is, let's say my other business unit wants to leverage GitHub Copilot. I want to have source code hosted in this organization, but I also want DevSecOps implemented so that I can have the most security that I can afford in my organization. This is scenario two, which is the full GitHub suite. It is the same as the above, where you have a GitHub Enterprise and Copilot license, but you can add advanced security and take advantage of capabilities like the security autofix agent, which automatically fixes vulnerabilities, as the name suggests. The list price of all these licenses combined would be $89 per user per month. And finally, let's imagine a scenario where I am not on GitHub whatsoever. I don't have source code. I might be a full Azure DevOps shop, and I just want my developers to start taking advantage of some Copilot capabilities in their IDE. To do this, all I would need to do is create a team outside of an organization, which is now possible in GitHub, and assign Copilot to that team. What's great is that this team will only be billed for Copilot licenses. And so this is great for the third scenario where I just want Copilot and my developers can leverage them in their IDEs like Visual Studio or JetBrains. The price per user per month would be $19. And of course, this is considering that I am using a Copilot business license. Finally, one important thing to note is once you synchronize your teams and organizations with Microsoft Entra ID, you can have a team be mapped to a group in your identity provider. And so access to that group from your IDP will determine access to these different license types and accesses in GitHub, effectively meaning that you can manage all the access needed in your GitHub from your IDP. Now let's discuss the key personas for license assignment. There are three different stakeholders that will be needed in the process of spinning up your GitHub tenant, assigning licenses, and getting those ready for your teams. The first is, of course, a GitHub administrator. This person will be responsible for managing the GitHub tenant and creating the different organizations and teams. If you don't have a stakeholder who is technically responsible for GitHub, you would need one for a proper process. The second one is an Entra ID, or in general, your identity provider's global administrator. This person will be required to approve the enterprise application in Entra ID because there is a synchronization setup that has to be done, and can also help in creating the groups in Entra ID that will be synchronized with your GitHub. And finally, once you are looking to leverage GitHub or GitHub Copilot or any of the capabilities, you will need an Entra ID subscription owner. If you recall, GitHub can be paid through Azure subscription, through metered billing, and for you to assign an Azure subscription to be billed for your GitHub services, that enterprise subscription owner needs to be involved in this process and either provide approval or do the connection to the subscription themselves. Now that we have seen what is required to set up GitHub licenses, let's look in the next videos on how we do that from an SSO perspective in terms of configuration, and then from assigning Azure subscription to the GitHub tenant. Thank you.